I just knew I was going to screw up the Zygarde guide, so let's try to go for the full Zygarde experience right now. As you can see, I only have 43 cells in the Zygarde cube, so I'm a little lacking on that front right there. However, because of the Pokemon Bank, you can actually trade Zygarde that you get from X and Y and then disassemble it in Sun and Moon. So that's a big way of skipping finding all of the extra cells and cores and stuff, and through the magic of something, I've ended up with 3 Zygarde. Now, this is an event Zygarde, and it will not break down, but I can disassemble these 2 Zygarde, and we're going to be good to go. Now, a big thing about this video and about my Zygarde guide, also I don't want to assemble, I want to disassemble. So I need to separate my already existing Zygarde, and the crazy thing about that is when you do it, it says it loses everything. So the Master Ball that I used to catch this Zygarde in X and Y, that's going to become just a pile of cells and then reform back into a Pokeball. So bye forever, Zygarde. That's pretty much how it works when you start breaking these things down instead of finding the cells out in the wild. But I think that's pretty crazy that I can just go and separate these 2 random Zygarde that I've picked up and then reform it back into the Power Construct. So it'll be a Zygarde 50% with Power Construct, and it uses the 100 cells, and then that's when we get into the 10% Zygarde. So the 10% Zygarde is also something I really screwed up with the guide because I never fiddled around with this and I wasn't prepared. But now because of the Pokemon Bank, there should be a lot more accessibility to like the Power Construct in the 100% form. So let's go and do that. The 100% stored in the Zygarde cube will be used to assemble the Unified Zygarde with the Power Construct ability. Yes, now you cannot disassemble it once you've used 100%. So effectively, I just broke down those 2 Zygarde and then fused them with a new ability, and now they'll never go back. But I was trying to figure out how to get the 10% for the longest time, because the 10% Zygarde is in its own really strange kind of breakdown. So what you need to do is you need to go back to the bag, use the Zygarde cube on the Power Construct, and then that's how you change the form. So now we've changed it to the 10% with Power Construct, and that's how you do it. And now it's time for the rest of the guide, because now we're effectively just turning this into how to use Zygarde's 10% form, since I neglected to do it in the last video. Also, let's talk about the Zygarde quote-unquote tutor moves, because you can actually use the Zygarde cube. So you use the item on the Zygarde, and then you can actually learn moves off of it. Now, depending on the Zygarde core that you find, is going to have different moves that you can teach it. So as you can see, I only have Core Enforcer, because I've only found 1 core. So now you can use this right here. So 1,000 Arrows is going to be Iki Town and Hollow's house, and then we have Po Town, we have Player's house, we have Olivia's room. So this is going to be effectively getting the tutor moves. So if you want Dragon Dance, 1,000 Arrows, 1,000 Waves, you can teach it through the Zygarde cube, but you need to find the proper core first. That's something that threw me, because when I was looking, I was like, oh, cool, let's go and do this, and I used the item, and then it only showed the Core Enforcer. I got kind of worried, wondering how all of this is possible and how people do this. So there we go, guys. Now, because of me not confidently knowing what I'm doing, you can understand Zygarde and then say things in confidence about how to use it for a moveset and then how to do it for yourself. Now let's talk about that 10%, because that's still something we need to finish off this guide with. And yeah, it's kind of the same thing as the complete form, except now we have a faster Pokemon that does some other crazy stuff. So Zygarde has a rather unique form change. First, as you collect Zygarde cores and cells throughout the game, you'll have the ability to change it between 10 and 50%, and then you use the cube on it, and then we're good to go. So let's go and talk about the moveset right here, because the stats of Zygarde 10% are very interesting. So the hit points are going to be 1/4 of the 100% form and half of the 50% form, but it is a much faster Pokemon. It's a 115 base speed. So when we talk about sweeping and in the 7th generation and just overall speed tiers, it's in a pretty good speed tier, even though it's a very, very frail Pokemon. 54 on the hit points, 71 on the defense, and then 85 on the special defense. And then remember, with that Power Construct, you're going to change form once you drop below 50%. So going from 54 base hit points to 216 is going to be quite the jump. You're actually gaining 300 hit points once you drop below half, I believe. I think that's how the math on Power Construct works. And again, I'm bad when it comes to Zygarde, because when there's 800 Pokemon, it's hard to give each Pokemon the attention they deserve, especially with Zygarde. Zygarde needs more attention. It demands more attention than others because of this extra complication level with its ability changes and Power Construct and having to disassemble it and whatnot. So let's try to get this guide back on track. And Zygarde with that 10% form is going to be interesting because we're going to be a fast sweeper, but also at the same time, look at that. 54 on the base hit points means we're going to have a hard time getting into Power Construct. We're either going to get absolutely blown up, or it's a lot easier to play around with the Zygarde, that you throw out a very weak hit, put it down to like, 70%, and then you can go and finish it off without having to worry about changing its form. And I was just thinking, alright, Life Orb, 100 on the attack, try to do as much damage as possible with the Outrage, with the 1,000 arrows, and then if we get into Power Construct, that's going to find the most conversion of success, because then we have 91 on our special attack, so Draco Meteor can do a respectable amount of damage. If it drops our special attack, that's okay, because then we can still convert and do some other things. Also, with the Core Enforcer move, I think we're going to be okay if we use that instead of Draco Meteor, but then that brings us to another problem, that we have a Jolly Nature on this set as it is, so lowering our special attack isn't a good idea when we have special things with us. So I was thinking maybe just go with that Naive Nature. So what the Naive Nature is going to do, it's going to make it to where we can maybe survive a physical hit and then maybe survive a special hit, and if that happens, then we're good to go. Also, with that 115 speed, we're outspeeding the opponent, we're becoming insanely tankier with that complete form, and then that means Dragon Dance, because when we're an 85 base speed Pokemon with a beneficial nature using Dragon Dance, that's going to pull us up to a 135 effective base speed, so then we're still going to outspeed everything as well. So it's kind of like gambling on that Zygarde, that alright, we're frail, we don't have as much going for us, and it's not like being bulkier and then going for like the +2 on the Dragon Dance and then just going from like 50% form into Zygarde's complete form. I like the tankiness, I like the bulk, I like the reliability of the 50%, but if you can actually get this form to work, I see it being faster and just a bit more devastating, because yeah, then it's only one Dragon Dance, and now you can mow everything down, and then you have the same effective hit points, that we weren't investing into our hit points anyways, because the change difference isn't really as much as if we were going into our tankiness and whatnot. So we're going to be fairly less tanky, but we set up a turn sooner, and then we still have an insane amount of damage to back us up. That's why I just really like the 1,000 arrows, that between Outrage, 1,000 arrows at +1, we're going to be nuking a lot of Pokemon, so that's going to be pretty awesome right there. And now it's time to check out some damage calculations just to see what we can work against, because we need to survive between 50% and 100%. As we can see right here, this is a Tapu Lele without an item, and it just straight up just blows us up right there. I also believe if it had a Timid Nature, yeah, Timid Nature is still going to be enough to KO us, so a 130 offensive Pokemon using some kind of boost off like the Psychic Terrain or having a Choice Band or something, or Choice Specs, is going to be an insane amount of damage. That's going to be very threatening to us. Also, the Garchomp is going to be interesting. So we have a good survivability range on that Earthquake, but if it just goes into a Life Orb, then we're dead. If it goes into Choice Band, then we're dead. So against some of the very powerful sweepers out there, we're not going to have too good of a time, but also our return damage is going to be pretty nice. That we just Outrage and we KO the Garchomp before Life Orb even comes into play. Now, Life Orb is also going to be the really awesome thing and the not so awesome thing at the same time, because the Life Orb against Garchomp pretty much seals our fate, that we're doing 10% off that Life Orb, then Garchomp moves, and then we die, because it'd have to be the lowest possible damage roll for us to not get KO'd by that. So the odds aren't looking too fantastic right there, but also Life Orb does kick our damage pretty significantly, and then we're at the +1 with that Dragon Dance into the Power Construct. Yeah, that's where things start getting pretty cool. So now let's just say we are in our 100% form. As you can see, +1 Life Orb Outrage, that we can KO quite a lot of Pokemon, just an uninvested Pokemon like Silvally or even bulkier Pokemon, or that's also going to be a very easy 2-hit KO conversion on the Earthquake. I was also looking at Pokemon like Ferrothorn, because that's when it starts getting kind of tricky. If we have like a very heavily defensive invested Ferrothorn, at +1 with a Life Orb, it's still 2-hit KO-ish, but it's at least a 3-hit KO. That between Protect and Leftovers and Leech Seed and all those shenanigans, it's going to be kind of hard to take down the Ferrothorn, but at least we still have a lot of tankiness behind us and we can get some good damage. But I'm just kind of like showing the breakdowns right here, that once we hit +1, even against like very high invested tanky Pokemon, if they lack sustain, then Earthquake's going to be a 2-shot, Outrage is a 2-shot, or the average sweeping Pokemon is just going to get blown up and absolutely destroyed by our Outrage as well. So there's pros and cons to running the 50% Zygarde as opposed to the 10%. 50% has like that stalling and still damage and bulk. 10% just takes it offensive immediately and then tries to go even harder after that once it gets into the Dragon Dance. And I was also looking into some other things that I saw a comment on my video saying that, yo, go for like a Z move Outrage. So that means we wouldn't have the Life Orb, but we'd still have like Z move Outrage on our 10%, and then that's going to work out pretty well. That we just do this insane move, we blow up the opponent, and then we just keep slamming damage onto them until they change our form right there, by getting a solid enough hit. So yeah, the outrage against Pokemon like Garchomp is going to be pretty awesome right there. And then against weaker sweeping Pokemon, yeah, the outrage is going to be a very powerful hit right there. That's a 130% on a Pokemon like the Weavile. So I guess that means like 85 hit points, 80 on the defense. That's going to be enough for that Z outrage. And Z outrage doesn't lock us in as well. So that's where we can also just like go Z outrage, maybe use the 1,000 arrows to ground a Pokemon that comes in to respond to us, and then that's where we can Power Construct, Dragon Dance, and then convert some KOs right there while being pretty sweepy. So this is also going to be a pretty fast and aggressive set as well. I think it could work out pretty well. So that's what we're looking at right here with the Zygarde, guys. It does things, you can run it different ways. If you break down other Zygarde, it's kind of complicated to reform together, and then you can make it happen. Also, I think you do need to soft reset for it first. That since once you make it into the Power Construct ability, you can't break it down. So that means you have to like form it again, wait until you get the right one, then transform it, and then that's how you're going to be able to set up for a 50% or 10% with Power Construct, and then maybe these guides will be of some use to. So guys, enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.